I've been listening to your podcast for a while now, and I love the content and the brutal honesty. As an attorney who fought against COVID mandates, I follow a lot of dissenting medical and legal voices and read a lot of great stacks. But your posts and podcasts are amongst my favorite. Thank you for all you do. Legal Glass, thank you so much for that lovely comment, and thank you for subscribing to my Substack. Helgi, hi Ahmed, all the best and lots of love from Iceland. I've been researching all this stuff since around 2009-ish, and I have to say that your podcast is one of the best in the space so far, and I fully support your change to start charging for every episode. I didn't even know that you had a paywall before. If you're ever in Iceland, please come by and visit me in my brewery in Hella. Wow. Well, I hope I do get to visit Iceland, and I'll definitely give you a shout if I come. And Jewel, I believe you're one of the few out there that is not controlled by ego, arrogance, pride, money, or coercion. It is truly humbling to discover how much of our lives are based on lies which we failed to question. And to everyone else who's signed up and become a supporter on Spotify and on Substack, I just want to say thank you so much and welcome. You're part of a wonderful tribe and you keep this show alive, and I'm most grateful. Okay, let's get into the show.
You are listening to the Doc Malik podcast. This show is 100% independent and fully funded by listeners like yourself. So if you wish to support Ahmed in all that he is doing, then please subscribe to his channel on Spotify or his Substack, or simply buy him a coffee with a one-off donation, links to which can be found at docmalik.com. Now, let's get on with the show.
To myself everything. I taught myself everything.
Yeah,
So
I agree.
all right, okay, listen, let's get into this. Genocide in a Suit. So, lovely documentary, absolutely brilliant. And I'm going to make sure all my listeners and readers get to watch it. And credit to you. Congratulations. You wrote it, you directed it, you made it. Fantastic, Janis. And initially, people might read that and go, genocide in a Suit. Oh, what are they talking about? Are they talking about some genocide in Israel and Gaza? And I'm like, no, it's not about that, is it? It's about the sophisticated art of how genocide is done through bureaucracy and middle management and legalese and technocratic language. But you can expand on that. Why did you call it Genocide in a Suit?
Yeah, well, exactly because it's done by bureaucrats. It's not done by gunmen. It's not done by some villains. They are ordinary people in suits which look lawful. It looks very correct, very polite, no hatred. It looks very professional. And still it's a genocide. It can be genocide.
All right. Absolutely. And I think that's it, isn't it? They use language that makes it sound like they're doing a good thing, when actually it's the complete opposite. It's an inversion of that. But, right at the beginning, like, I think the film is almost made into three, isn't it? You give the example of the different stages of genocide during COVID, because that was a recent example. It's a very good example. And then you talk about the situation in Latvia, and then you're talking about the global situation we're in. Am I right? That's how you've broken it up, isn't it?
Well, I believe that the genocide, which is being enforced in Latvia, it's the same pattern is unfolding in every country, basically almost in every country. I'm just using Latvia as an example, as a case study, because I cannot use a different country because it's my country and know how it is. And so other people, why it should be interesting for everyone, because the same patterns are emerging wherever you are. It's just that we have different names or different institutions maybe, but all the rest is the same. I believe so, almost everywhere.
No, I agree. I mean, listen, Janis, when I watched your documentary and what they were saying about what's happening in Latvia, I was like, oh my God, that's here. That's here in the United Kingdom. Right. And I know we're the same continent, Europe, but Latvia is a long way away. Like, it's down the Baltic eastern end, and And it's shocking. You're like, wow, that's literally happening here. And, you know, we're told we have all these global crises like global climate change and global pandemics and global war and terror and global money laundering. But you know what? The only global issue that I see is tyranny. Like in the past, you had like one or two countries or blocks of countries that, you know, were doing that. Now it's everywhere. Like there's nowhere to run to.
Yes, I think it's very important for people to understand that, like, we know that like communists and fascists are like tyrants, yes, and which did crimes against humanity. So we should understand and should acknowledge that also globalists are not better. They are exactly the same. It's just that how they do it is more sophisticated. It's more they're more hypocritical. They're more hypocrites, right? And that's why it's less evident for a normal citizen. And what I believe and what is my hope that my documentary will help to see these patterns, to see these structures, how they operate. And once you see them, you cannot unsee them. And so I hope people will better understand how we are actually, everyone right now living in a genocide society, which is no better than fascism.
Absolutely. Well, can you let's go down. You know, remember you talked about the different stages of genocide, like nine or 10 or whatever.
Yes.
You know, from classification onwards. Can you just break that down and explain that to everybody?
Yes. So, firstly, this stages of genocide. This is a concept not developed by me. It's developed by Gregory Stanton, who is an American genocide scholar, a lawyer, and he's the founder and long-term president of NGO, which is called Genocide Watch. You can look it up on the internet, Genocide Watch. Yes. So, and Gregory Stanton. He is not a rebel. he is former United States State Department official, and also he has been an United Nations expert. So basically, he's a man inside the system. Let's put it clearly, right? And he has developed this model, and this model consists of 10 stages. What people usually, when they hear the term genocide, right, they believe that it's only the ninth stage, as you're showing now in the extermination. That this is how they understand genocide. But can you imagine? It's only the ninth stage. Before that, there are 8 silent stages, which are kind of invisible. And so my documentary, I'm analyzing particularly those 8 silent stages, and which is also the aim of the Stanton's model. It is to understand, to warn people about genocide when it is not already, because when it's the ninth stage, it's already too late. We must recognize genocide in the earliest stages, and the earlier we recognize, the more likelier it is that we can stop it, right? And yes, and people also tend to think that maybe that genocide like is a crime against humanity, that it's something very brutal, very bloody, and very tragic. But in reality, it's legal, you know. It's that's the main point of a genocide, that it is legal, bureaucratic, and very normal. There's nothing extraordinary happening especially during these 8 silent stages. It's very normalized, and it's even doesn't require hate. You believe something crazy, some crime or something. No, there's at the earliest stages, there's even no hatred. So everything is very normalized, very legal, very bureaucratic, very professional. That's exactly what happened during the COVID, right? Especially in the very beginning, and basically especially all the globalist crimes, they are very normalized. They're very bureaucratic, legal. There's nothing goes outside the legal framework, right? At least the domestic, the lower level legal framework.
So can you give? Sorry, I was going to say, can you just give examples of each one of those stages then? Because you did that beautifully in your documentary, like,
Yes.
so that people understand what do you mean by that. And I know what you mean. Like when you think of genocide, you think of like, Rwanda and the Burundis and, the Houthis and Tutsis and Houthis and whatever, that kind of stuff where people are machetes and they're chopping them up. Or you're thinking of Gaza and bombs going off everywhere and people hate them and one side hates another and one takes turn. But what you're describing is that genocide can happen. I mean, it's democide when the government does it, but it's very clinical. It's very sanitized. There's no emotion. It's dispassionate. It's like, corporate. It's just that's what happens. It's the process. We're going to go ahead and do this. And there is no anger, shouting, hatred, slogans. It's just business.
Yes, exactly. And that's what people mostly do not recognize. And that's why they think they're not in the genocide, but we are. Because genocide is never like, it's not an accident or it's not something with what happens overnight. It's a process. It's a planned process which develops in stages. And yes,
I was going to say, before you start going down the list, classification, symbolization, discrimination, all that kind of stuff, can you define it? What is genocide?
Yeah, well, genocide is when a specific when society is divided into specific groups, like, for example, vaccinated, not vaccinated, then one nationality, different nationality, and it actually completely does not matter how they are divided. There can be only very creatively divided. And then one group is basically executed. And execution is not immediate killing, but it can also be depriving of rights and persecution and all kind of this pressure, all kind of government pressure that government can do against this a specific group of people. And it can be also like, for example, I show in the documentary that it can also not only be ethnic as we have used to, it can be also, for example, foreign corporations against our population who are living, for example, in Latvia, like small enterprises, family business, and all this. These are also two groups. So really, those two groups can be put in very different positions, and they're in very different segments. So, the main thing is that that law, people believe that law maybe can prevent genocide, but genocide is often legal. That's the absurd. That's the absurd of genocide. That this is already, the genocide is already put into the law, especially under domestic law. Maybe the constitution or something is above it, but when a policeman or somebody is like arresting you, they are not following most likely the constitution. They're following some kind of a procedure or some kind of rule what they understand, which says something. So yes, that's
Okay, so I really want you to go down this list because it's very important. So
okay.
my understanding after watching your documentary was that what I've taken away is, in my head, I thought genocide was something that was done, you know, one ethnic group to another ethnic group, one race of people to another race of people. Although I hate saying that because I believe there's only one race, the human race. And then I also thought it was something that was temporarily done very quickly. You know, people are genocided like very quickly. You know, you're killed, you're gassed, you're murdered, you're injected, you know, whatever. What I've taken away from your documentary is that actually genocide is the targeting of a group of people, singling them out, depriving them of their rights, their freedoms, and killing them. And that killing process can be done very slowly. I mean, it can be done over decades.
Exactly.
It doesn't have to be done in days and weeks. You could be killed, poisoned, your life force drained from you over a very long period of time. So, you know, that's where I've taken it. And it's not just governments and armed groups or partisan groups. It's corporations, it's governments, it's NGOs, it's supranational bodies. It's an attack basically on humanity and groups of humanity. And that's what I took away from it. Does that sound reasonable?
It's exactly what it is. It's
Okay.
exactly what it is, because the speed of the killing doesn't make it make the basically the legal difference of the killing. If you kill somebody fast or slow, it does not diminish the responsibility of that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you want me to go through those 10 stages briefly?
Please, let's talk about classification and maybe use COVID as an example of like, what do you mean by classification?
Okay, so basically classification, this is us versus them. So as we already indicated, that so society is divided into two groups, and why is it done? Because classification simplifies the governance, right? It turns complex individuals into manageable categories. And very important that this is no hatred. Yes, it's no hatred. It's just like an administrative tool, right? So, and that's what we already saw. Like vaccinated, unvaccinated. You're not Ahmad. Yes, you're simply unvaccinated, for example, and you're put into a manageable category. And this is basically is the first step, the first stage of genocide. That, for example, during the what people know, at least, of course, as you will say that history, we're not sure yet about our history. I'm very agree, but what people usually know is that the genocide against the Jews by Hitler and all this stuff, and there was this ethnic division, like Germans and Jews, right? So, but this is not only ethnic; it's also vaccinated, not vaccinated, and we can use and find many other reasons how to divide people by color of the skin and so on and so on. So after the first stage, then comes the second stage, which is symbolization. And yes, and also the symbolization allows this policy, this legal framework to target groups without naming individuals, like certificates, yes, vaccine certificate, status code, and from a person you become like a QR code. You're no more Ahmad, you're just a QR code which you're showing whether you can enter a shop or you cannot. or you can receive, or you can continue to work, or you cannot. And yes, and I believe that during the COVID, the QR code, the vaccination certificate was that symbol, the same symbol which was the Star of David against the Jews, and exactly the same symbol was used. So perfectly fits the Stanton's second step, or the COVID scenario. And after the symbolization comes the third stage, discrimination. Yes, and discrimination is legalized exclusion. So once encoded into those rules, it no longer feels personal, right? Discrimination doesn't always say you're forbidden. It says you no longer qualify. And nobody is, again, there's no hate, just everyone follows the rules. This is the idea of the modern genocide, of the modern discrimination. It's not that somebody is like throwing stones at you. No. Nobody is even being impolite of you. Everything is very, very polite. It's just that you don't qualify. Sorry, that's the system. And this is discrimination. This is genocide. Because the result is the same. Even that the form is different or more polite. Maybe like nowadays genocide form is more polite, more kind, not so rude. But it does not make it legal. It does not make it not genocide. It's still genocide. So, for example, during the COVID, people were excluded from employment, right? Not because of their performance, but because of their status. They were unvaccinated. So they did not have the right to work. In Latvia, more than 60,000 people were fired because of that. And we have a population of 1.8 million. So it's very many people, actually. And also access maybe to services, very necessary services, also become conditional according to your status. So you're not qualified, you can't get the services, sorry. So this is how this discrimination works. And the tragic thing is that once this discrimination is normalized through law, through policy, the persecution no longer looks exceptional. It looks just procedure, it's like administrative process. Yes, and it's very normalized. Actually, it doesn't look extraordinary. And by understanding this principle, people should understand that it doesn't matter. There's still, it's the third stage of genocide, which they were in. And maybe they are currently in different areas of life, right? So, and after that comes the humanization. And the humanization is also not like you're like, for example, I don't know, some microchip is by force put under your skin or something like this. Not at all, not at all. Maybe today, as you said, it's clinical. It's not emotional, because people then become like they become risks, costs, or non-compliant units, we can call them. This is what the humanization is. They are, for example, you're not described as individual, but you are described as a risk, because you're not vaccinated. You are a risk, right? So this is the way how people are being dehumanized. Or somebody maybe is treated as a transmission mechanism. You transmit the disease, so you're dehumanized by this mechanism. And so that's the matter of language. And language shifts from people to compliance. And clinical language, that's a very good word you said. Clinical language replaces human language. So we have adverse events, right? Negative outcomes or disinformation, risk factors, and people just get lost by under this term, under these terms. And there's no rough words, there's no screaming, yes, there's no panic, there's just very cold language, very cold professional language. And this is how the dehumanization works in genocide. And we all went through that very, very clearly during the COVID time. We can remember that, right? That was what what was happening. So dehumanization today, it doesn't even sound cruel. It sounds professional. And once people are reduced to those risks, to those vectors and costs, and then excluding those risks and excluding those costs, or however you put them, then this no longer feels violence. You know, it feels simply management. It's just management of the risks, and this is how this dehumanization is today. So it's quite frightening because it's very normalized, and nobody is like put in under chains or in some super harsh situation, but the outcome is the same, right? The outcome of the genocide is the same, independent on how you get there.
Do you know what? It's a wonderful description. Sorry for interrupting, but it's like the people who are carrying out the genocide aren't human anymore. They've lost their humanity. It's almost like robotics. It's like a computer. It's something that's cold, calculated, algorithmic, managerial, just executing, orders.
Yes. And this is the genius of the system. How you can make dehumanization without evident violence, without you just turn people into risk factors, and then you eliminate the risk factors. And of course, you need a very huge media package to be able to implement that all. But this is what they have, what they are doing.
I just thought of another thing. It's like they turn on the emotion when they want to. So, for example, to get the classification, they ramp up the emotion. Those dirty anti-vaxxers, those stupid anti-vaxxers, those misogynistic anti-vaxxers, those racist white supremacist anti-vaxxers.
Yes.
Those and in the Nazi era, I mean, I don't know what they said about the Jews, the dirty Jews, the rats or whatever. In Gaza, and the Israelis are calling them subhuman, Amalek. The Palestinians are less than animals. So they use emotion at the beginning to classify people, but then they dial it right down when they've got the things going. Then it suddenly all becomes very unemotional, very, 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 like I said, clinical.
Yes, exactly. The same pattern. Exactly the same pattern, just different country, different situation, and different division.
Because now, like in Gaza, they're talking about the Board of Peace, and they're at the WEF Davos meeting, and they're talking about rebuilding Gaza, and there's no mention of the people who've suffered. It's just like, this is the real estate, this is how much property we've got, we're going to build in these phases, this is investment opportunities. It's just like, it's just a sales pitch, and it's so clinical. It's so detached. It's like a property pitch. It's just investments, money, profit. There's nothing about lives lost, widows, orphans, amputations, all the misery, the death of the culture and everything. No, it's all just cold business talk.
Exactly. That's what nowadays genocide is. So continuing maybe with the fifth stage, which is called organization. So in history, we know that there were gunmen and there were gas chambers and all this stuff. But today's genocide, we have departments, legal, medical, technical, and all kind of departments. And they are doing, each department is doing a small task. And I want to stress that they're doing a lawful task, not illegal task, a very small and very legal task. And it's not violence by those departments. It's just coordination between them. And if you take a single department, so no single department is causing any harm. If we look at each single department separately, but they all together, they make this harm actually inevitable. And each department is, as I particularly love this saying, is just doing their job. This is the how it is, that everybody is just doing their job, and the outcome is genocide. And that's how nowadays genocide actually is produced, because tasks are broken into narrow professional roles, and everybody can say we are only a small part of the process. And so nobody sees the full picture, and nobody is reliable of the whole picture, at least those who are implementing it. Of course, maybe only few at the top maybe understand and see the big picture. And this is the way how then systems replace judgment, and some algorithms that make decisions, and people just approve those decisions. And in that case, even a mistake, it's just a system problem or system issue. It's not a human problem. And very often this accountability is dilutes, like in technology, like in this technological processes. That's why those who design those decisions, they never face the consequences.
I've heard this. Sorry, you're saying.
Yeah. So yes. What do you want to say?
So I was going to say, I've heard this, exactly this. I was witness to Jay Bhattacharya in a hall that I went to, saying, and Dr. Asim Malhotra, oh, these are well-intentioned people, the system failed us, it's just inefficiency, mistakes were made, blah, blah, blah. And there's no accountability. And I mean, I don't know about you, but, I disagree with that. There is a human being or a group of human beings who are responsible for all of this, and all for every genocide. You can't just blame it on the system. Yes, there are systems in place that allow it to happen, but even those systems were engineered in a way to allow that to happen. Am I right? Hi, everybody. Little interruption to remind you that I offer a consultation service. If you want to navigate the sick care system, if you've got an acute illness that you're dealing with, or even a chronic illness that you need to shake off and recover from or reverse, if you want to get a second opinion, you want some advice, knowing what questions to ask of your doctor, I'm here for you. I have a unique position, having been a mainstream doctor and surgeon for 25 years, but also someone who understands the alternative health care system. And I'm telling you, there's minefields in both. Sometimes it can be so confusing knowing which way to turn and what's right and what's not right, because there's so much conflicting noise and advice. So I'm practicing medicine as one truly should be, which is empowering and educating the patient to be their own doctor. I'm offering consultations where I empower you with wisdom and knowledge so that you ask better questions and you can find solutions that are typically concealed or hidden from you by the mainstream doctors. I believe in medical ethics and I believe in informed consent. I have no other agenda. I practice first, do no harm to the patient. So if this resonates with you, please visit my web docmalik.com, where you can see the booking page and read all the reviews from past patients that I've been able to help. And while you're there, check out my website, because there's a shop section with affiliate links to products that my family and I use. These are all wonderful companies. They're all aligned with our values. And these products are not things that I would not be recommending if they were genuinely not brilliant, such as sea green supplements, sauna, and Nudum skincare, etc., etc. So do check out my affiliate page. It's another way that you can support this show. And another thing you can do is just share my content. And if you haven't already, follow my channel and leave a review if you can on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Okay, folks, that's enough of me. Back to the show. Thank you so much. Lots of love.
Absolutely. But I'm not talking now about actually the reliability of the genocide. I'm now describing how so people could recognize the fifth stage organization, which doesn't look like something bad at all. It looks just corporate structure, professional language, and the normal work process. But of course, even if there's no intent, you're just doing your job. But you should have foreseen the consequence, and you should have, like, as a professional question, for example, you're just vaccinating somebody, you're maybe a nurse vaccinating somebody, and if you can also be actually held accountable for genocide legally. It's very possible. Even a nurse who did the vaccination, because and we have a very good example for that. In Nuremberg, what was the most famous phrase everyone said? I was just following orders, right? So I was not doing anything bad. That's like I was following law today, or procedure. And despite of that, there still is accountability for that. And that's what I want to stress out. But the point is that to recognize the organization, the fifth stage of genocide, as I described it, this organization doesn't require hatred; it just requires coordination, and this looks very normal. And I encourage just people to see it on the pattern of COVID, and how we lived through that, and how we actually all experienced that. And now if I can now talk about the sixth stage, which is polarization, because now we're getting more and more closer to the ninth stage, which is extermination. And so the genocide by each stage becomes more and more visible. And the sixth stage polarization, this is about preventing questioning, actually. And this was very, very visible during the COVID. Yes?
So I just want to show you something. You've sparked my memory. Sorry for interrupting, but I just want to quickly show you something. So in the UK, I don't know what it was like in Latvia, we had these daily briefings. This was Chris Whitty, the chief medical officer. This is Boris Johnson, the prime minister. This is Ian Vallance, or Patrick Vallance, I can't remember. Patrick Vallance, maybe. And he was the chief science officer. And look, they're all wearing suits. They're all standing there dictating the science, the COVID policies. And this is what you mean. The genocide isn't committed by people with guns and army fatigues. It is literally people in suits.
Exactly. Anyway. Exactly. People in suits. And so what is polarization, the sixth stage? It's about preventing questioning. It's very important because it turns moral doubt, which is logical doubt, and it turns it into social betrayal. Like when the environment is polarized, like saying even "I'm not sure," it sounds like disloyalty, and silence after that, then it's much safer than curiosity, right? So you better stay silent. Don't become curious. This is how polarization, how it looks in genocide, and it's when this disagreement, it stops being about ideas, and it actually becomes about loyalty, right? So asking question is no longer neutral. It's interpreted as taking the wrong side, basically. So why are you doing this? You're against us? Yes?
I want to give a real world example of that. You're absolutely right, because the polarization, when it's committed, is then also reinforced and amplified by the average person. It's no longer, the people in the suits who are doing this. It becomes like a contagion, a virus, where everybody now is polarizing and acting in this way. So in the UK, we have doctors, lots of doctors, 300,000 doctors, and there's a private Facebook group called the On Call Room, and it's got 40,000 doctors on it. Private, only doctors can enter it. You have to give your registration number and blah blah blah, and everything that's said there and done there can only be kept there. You can't discuss it anywhere else. And my wife got me to join that group because she wanted to convince me that the vaccinations were good and that I was being crazy. And I'm a doctor as well. So I joined this group, and all I saw was groupthink, cultish-like groupthink. And there was one case that I remember looking at and thinking, oh my God, this is horrendous. There was a female doctor, who said to the group, hey, everybody, because what you would do is you would always ask questions or post things, or, they were also very, very juvenile, like stupid sexual innuendos, dick jokes and all that kind of stuff. And I thought, man, you're doctors, like, seriously, grow up. But one of these female doctors posted this following: hey everybody, I just want everybody's advice and opinions about something. I've had COVID already and recovered. I took the first COVID shot, but I had a severe reaction to it. I've now discovered, after trying for several years, that I'm now pregnant. Should I have the second shot? Now, to me, it was obvious. Three things. She's had COVID, got better, so she's immune. She's had one shot of COVID and she had a severe reaction, so bloody hell. And now she's pregnant. The answer is, you don't need the shot. Just, you're going to be fine, right? Hundreds of doctors piled in. Why are you asking this question? What's wrong with you? You sound like an anti-vaxxer. You should be grateful that you're getting a second shot. It was insanity. It was like, you are not allowed to question. How dare you? What is wrong with you? And then she wrote, oh, okay, thanks. Sorry, folks. I was just getting a little bit nervous. And, oh, you've reassured me. I'm so grateful. Thank you, everybody. What the hell, dude?
Yes, exactly. In Latvia, even one doctor was brutally pushed out of a conference during the conference because he was asking about are there any conflict of interest to those people who are presenting vaccines. and it brought a very it was a loud case here.
Oh, wow. Well, if you can find that doctor and connect to me, that'd be great. Love to speak to that doctor.
Yes, I will find out whether he knows English, but I know him very good. I can call him. Yes,
please. Okay, carry on.
And yes, that's what you said, that, for example, in this professional environment, this disagreement, which is it's normal that you have, like, for example, professional disagreement, for example, also about those vaccines, but it is reframed as a moral failure, right? So if you're basically, you're not wrong, you become dangerous. You're not professionally wrong, you become like dangerous, you're like framed like dangerous. And that's what happens, and that is the polarization, how it happens. And in this case, of course, silence becomes safer than honesty, right? And people do not speak, even if they see problems, not because they agree, but just because they are afraid to be like on the wrong side, right? And that's what is happening. And yes, and once polarized, arguments are no longer answered; they are really punished. And in Latvia, we had a case when a doctor was even his certificate, his doctor's certificate, was cancelled because of a Facebook post. And even crazier, he was even in this Facebook post, he did not even say his own opinion. He clearly just said what the third person, he just wrote what the third person said, and he clearly showed it in his Facebook post. And because of that, he was removed his license as a doctor. And what is even more crazier, that my own father, who is the president of the Doctors Association, he also took part in this crime. As he actually, it's a very tough and sad thing for me, but this is how it actually is.
And, I'm sorry to hear that. I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah. So in this polarization situation, then people, doctors, and everyone, they are basically, if they speak, they must like signal like belonging, not express what they think, right? That's what is the result, what they want the result of that to be. And actually, of course, this polarization, it doesn't convince anyone. It just trains and makes people to stay silent, right? So no questioning. Questioning is punishable, right? You are deprived your license, or you are removed from media, from social media. You're censored, or you're fined, or whatever the consequences are. But that way, you are made not to ask questions, and not to, and you are forced to agree, basically. And we all went through that. Me, myself, I got fines from government in 2001, about 40,000 euros together.
What? For what?
For example, for speaking at an event. And the formulation was like that. For example, for speaking at an event, yes, where we were speaking against mandates and all this.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
So,
and
Janis, let's just stop for the list for a second. We haven't got to preparation yet, have we?
no, the next one.
Yeah. So can I quickly ask you something? What is your background? What is it you do? Are you
Okay.
allowed to talk about it?
Yes. So I'm a lawyer myself by education. I'm a lawyer and MBA. So I have a company which is producing water. This is my main business, what I'm doing. And my company during the COVID was, so they could not attack my arguments, because they simply could not find any contra arguments for them. But they were attacking my company and my water, and they all the supermarket chains in our country and many other shops refused selling my water because of what just I was saying. That's the situation how it was.
And when you say you're selling water, are you talking about bottled water, distilled water? Like what kind of water? Clean water?
It's bottled, and it usually goes with those refillable bottles, those large 5-gallon bottles, but we have all kind of volumes or all kind of bottles, and
I'm sure with your legal lawyer background, that must have really helped you see through all the garbage, all the nonsense, and then argue your case against this.
Yes, that's why my videos, because I've made hundreds of videos during the COVID time, but I did it only in our Latvian local language. They did not go anywhere international because I was just doing them in our language. And yes, I basically I think I totally, and they were at the beginning, they're very popular actually, because because at the very beginning there was even no censorship yet in place. It was in early 2020. They were, but then, and I really, they were very popular and they could not make any counter arguments for that. They could not debunk me basically. And instead of debunking, they just attacked me, attacked my company, and did what, like removing me from the shelves of the shops, and that's what they did. And that's why I have like very real consequences of saying my opinion here.
Dude, you know what? God bless you. So next thing I'd say to you, Janis, is that, so you've lost income and revenue. Have you managed to get that back now?
Not true. Well, the good thing is that we are still operating, but no, I have not managed to get that back at all. Basically, still at the very moment, all the shopping market chains in Latvia, like Rimi, Maxima, and also others, they are still supporting this genocide which is happening. So they are not. We are still not at the phase of understanding. We are, and we are the phase of which will be the 10th stage we'll later talk about, which is denial.
Okay, let's go through the list again. So are we going to go to preparation now? Is that the next one?
Yes.
All right, let's talk about that. That's stage number 7. So tell me about preparation.
So yeah, preparation, it happens through policy, again, through law, legal frameworks, and emergency protocols, right? So, and they use such words as temporary, right? Temporary, exceptional, emergency, and everything is for safety. Yes, nothing is for your harm, everything is for your safety. And that's how they prepare this ground to use emergency powers, temporary regulations, right? And that's how they are removing your rights by implementing those legal frameworks they have made. And again, people in those frameworks, in those legal frameworks, are sorted into some kind of categories, like you, for example, during the COVID, you were tested, you were not tested, vaccinated, not vaccinated. You when you were even vaccinated in 19 days, you did not have a certificate, and so on and so on. So there were many different categories how they were sorting you, and also they invented all kind of data tracking technology and infrastructure. Like they were even there in Latvia, there was even an app where you could see with maybe if you have been in contact with some vaccinated, infected, and so on. And that's the preparation. So they create this app, yes, and they they popularize it. They invest the time and money into that. And of course, and one of the actually the greatest, most evident crimes on which everything was built on during the COVID was the PCR test. Yes, because PCR test was a complete fraud, because even the inventor of the PCR method was Kary Mullis, and he was accidentally or no, but he died in 2019, like a year before the COVID started, right? And he particularly said that this test cannot be used to test somebody whether he has an infectious disease or not, because all this testing is based on cycles. It's called cyclation, or how many cycles. The method is so that if you run it on like 35 cycles, then there is a probability of about 20% that your result will be positive, but you are actually not positive. And if you run it, for example, only 9 cycles, then yes, then the method becomes more likely that only the real infected are found, right? And they, when I was personally calling our Latvian state agency who was responsible of testing, and who were like every morning they were telling how many were infected and so on. So they did not even understand the principle of this method and how the cycling worked. They even could not tell me how many cycles are they running those tests. And the main idea and actually all the fake story, all the COVID, I would say pandemic, basically, it was based on this fake test. If there was no this test, there were no basis for even anything, right? And this was the test was where on what everything, like, if you take the test out, all the card collapses totally. It's all built on the test. And it's very easy to debunk the test. It's super easy. It's anyone who understands a little bit of how the PCR mechanism works, because what they are testing, they're not finding are you actively infected. They are just looking for a DNA sample in you. yes, and the DNA sample stays long after you have been ill, you have been infected, you have been ill, you are now well, but still the DNA sample may stay there for a long time. And
absolutely. I mean, it's very convenient that Carrie Mullis died just before the pandemic. So convenient. And like you said, 80 to 90% false positive rate.
Yeah.
And it's not even then just a false positive rate. They were telling everybody to test multiple times throughout the week. And each test was registered as an individual case rather than being linked and grouped to a individual. So instead of saying this one person has had 5 tests, you know, and it's tested positive, you know, once, they would say there's been 5 tests in a week. That's 5 cases that are positive, even though it actually only was regarding one person. And they used this case, you know, positive cases, even though it was exaggerated, false positive, and representing many times just the one person, to inflate the idea that there was this pandemic, this bloody plandemic.
Yes, that's a very evident fraud. And those people, for example, who worked in the laboratories and who did all that, there's no way they can say that they didn't understand, that they did not know. They just did not speak up. They just did not speak. That was the only thing. And during the COVID times, I even caught on a telephone conversation our head of our COVID laboratory, who also I'm not sure in English I would be able to tell. There's a term which is infectious and infected. There's I'm not sure if I'm now telling it correctly, but the idea is that, for example, I was asking, does the test say, are you infectious or are you infected? Because there's a huge difference in that. Infectious means that you are actively able to pass the disease to somebody else, right? And infected means that you are simply carrying the DNA code, which may be no risk to others at all, right? And he, in a secret phone conversation, he said to me, yes, that the COVID test does not tell if you are infectious, meaning that it does not tell if you can make somebody else sick. It just tells whether you are carrying the DNA code. And that's the whole story, basically, of how the fake COVID narrative was made possible. And during this polarization, what is also the preparation. Yes, we're now in preparation. They also use like language. They soften the language. You know, they use like temporary measures. Like they use like doing everything for safety. Yes, like of being very cautious and very, very kind and very worried about the health of people. And that's how they pack it. How in the stage of preparation in genocide is actually evolving exactly by very normalized soft language, not by screaming and rude words and very polite. So that's basically.
So I think so, and I think what you mean, if you don't mind me summarizing, preparation is that they use euphemisms to cloak their real intentions. So they refer, such as referring to their goals like ethnic cleansing, purification, counter-terrorism.
Yeah.
They're not going to say, we're going to kill you. They don't talk like that. But there is a gentle increase also of inflammatory language, and yeah, it's not good. Anyway, carry on. So what's the next stage? Persecution?
Exactly. So So persecution, as everything during the genocide, it's also legal. So it's not something illegal, it's legal. It's according to the law. It's actually enforced by this procedure, not by hatred. It's just following the law. And people aren't prosecuted by mobs or some kind of criminals. They are simply restricted by law, by systems, by procedures. For example, like a bank freezes your account, right? It's not that somebody very politely, and they usually say, I'm sorry, mister, but your account is not available, right? It's very kind, very welcoming, very polite, but it does not make it not genocide. It's genocide. It's just how it's, the form is different. And, or employer, if you're an employee, the contract is suspended because you did not, you have spoken up, yes, you said something you shouldn't have. It's your story, right?
Can I give an example? So when the hospital director, my local private hospital that I'd been at for like 10 years, where most of my private practice was 80%, he rang me and said, "Hi, Ahmed, how are you doing?" I went, "Oh, it's okay. Everything all right, Fraser? What can I do?" 6 o'clock at night. My kids are like running around like crazy. They're hungry. I'm trying to make dinner for them. Wife is at work. Yeah, I just want to tell you, we're suspending you. I'm like, sorry, what? Yeah, you're not going to be able to access any patient records, and you're not allowed to enter the hospital policies. It's just while we're doing the investigation. Have you got anything to ask me? Any questions? And I'm like, yeah. What the hell did I do wrong? Oh, you failed to refer us, tell us about a GMC investigation. GMC is the medical regulation body. I was like, I haven't been investigated by the GMC. Oh, yes, you were. I went, no, I wasn't. How do you know I have? Because I wrote to the GMC and they said there's no investigation or complaint. Well, we need to look into this. And, have you got anything to say? I was like, yeah, this is nonsense. What do you mean? Like, you're just suspending me? Am I going to be coming to a meeting? Can I provide any information? No, we're going to conduct this investigation and we'll get back to you. Are you otherwise okay? Is there anything we can do to help you? And I'm like, you've literally just stopped me from seeing my patients, operating on my patients. I can't make any money. You've just literally pulled the rug from beneath my feet. My whole world is collapsing. My head is swimming, and you're asking me if I'm okay. No, of course I'm not fucking okay. And then it was just like, well, it was nice speaking to you, Ahmed. So we'll get back to we'll get back to you. If there's anything else we can do to help you, just let me know. I'm like, anything, like, stop suspending me and let me see my patients. What are you talking about? It was literally like that with a smile. Like, I could see his face. Okay, nice talking to you, Ahmed. Have a nice evening. What the fuck? You've just ruined my life. And you're like, have a nice evening.
Yes.
I think this is what you're talking about.
Yes, no gunman, just policy. With a smile.
It was literally, you've breached our practicing privileges. I went, I haven't. I have not been under any investigation by the GMC. Well, that's what we need to decide, because it looks on the face of it, you've breached the, practicing privileges. And I'm like, there's no patient. There's no nothing. I haven't done anything wrong. I haven't killed anybody. I'm like, what are you talking about? This perceived breach of protocol, which I haven't, by the way, but they just used it as pretext. And with a smile, it's like, your career's ended. But if I can help you, let me know.
And this, it's really, in essence, this is punishment, right? But officially, it's not called punishment, right? So that's how this system effects this punishment, but they simply just call it by different name. And every normal common sense person understands that this, but how this punishment really operates, and this is it's amazing hypocrisy. It's amazing, and it's actually unbelievable how something like this is possible in democracy. But I hope that already most of the people who are watching will understand that we are not living in democracy, just living in some in a system which is called democracy, yes, but which is not democracy, just called democracy. So,
and the thing is, the people hide behind faceless names, titles, institutions. So
yes.
I've just been kicked in the balls by one hospital, and then 4 weeks later, another hospital said to me, "Oh, we've suspended you because you've had a guest on your show, and we think you might be anti-Semitic." And I said, "I never said anything anti-Semitic." And they said, "Well, we have to do an investigation for patient safety."
Yep.
And the staff safety. I went, hold on a second. I've been working for years as a doctor. No patient's unsafe for me. I've treated Jews, Christians, atheists, Muslims, Buddhists. I don't give a damn who you are and what your background is. Like, what are you talking about? And I work with people with all backgrounds. It's like, no, for the safety of the staff and the public, we need to investigate you. And you're not allowed to, in the hospital. You're denied access to everything. And we're going to carry out this investigation. And only at the end of the investigation will you be allowed to return. And guess what? I wasn't invited to any meeting. I wasn't invited to provide any evidence. I had no say in anything. And it was all like, oh, but it's, it's just, we have to do the procedure. We have to do an internal review. There'll be a meeting and a panel. And no name. I'm not giving any name. It's just, and these are anonymous complaints, not the public, not the patients. And 5 months, 6 months almost it took to conclude the investigation. And at the end, they said, you're not anti-Semitic. And nothing, none of your podcasts are anti-Semitic. Everything was, but 6 months, I've been kicked out of one hospital where I've got 80% of my practice, 20% of my other practice. I've been now denied working there for 6 months. How can you make a living? How can you make any money if you're not even allowed to enter the building, And
Exactly.
and the process is the punishment. And again, it was like, do you need to speak to anybody about your mental health? Are you okay? Can we support you? You're just like, you've just shot a bullet into my heart and you're asking me if I want paracetamol. I mean, what the like, are you listening to yourself? Are you okay? I know this might be upsetting to you. So if there's anything else we can do to help, if you've got any questions, and then anytime you ask a real question, like a genuine question, there's no answer. They don't want to. They don't want to answer any of your questions. They just say that because it makes them sound good, but they don't actually mean it. It's all just bullshit and lies.
Yes, this is how persecution looks not during fascism, but during globalism, which is now.
Folks, if you've enjoyed this conversation, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. This podcast survives because of listeners like you. If you want to hear the second half of this podcast, then please consider becoming a paid subscriber to continue supporting independent conversations. And if you want personalized support for your own health or those of your loved ones, then book a consultation. It's available at docmalik.com. Thanks for being part of this journey.
Genocide ensued, hiding behind public safety. The 8 silent stages. Killing is only the 9th stage. Latvia case study. A warning. A small nation's story revealing a global pattern. Recognize the pattern. If you can see it here, you can stop it anywhere. Most of us think of genocide as the moment of mass killing, which is only the 9th stage, the one that is loud, brutal, and impossible to ignore. But long before that, there are 8 other stages, quiet, calculated, and often hidden behind the mask of law. Sometimes they even arrive wrapped as something good, presented as being in the public interest. Genocide doesn't always come with guns or gas chambers. In the 21st century, it wears a suit and speaks the language of public safety, sustainable development, or crisis response.
To build back better.
Latvia, a small Baltic nation and member of the European Union, is no exception. It is a warning, because what happened here is happening everywhere. What are these 8 silent stages of genocide before extermination? They are bureaucratic, legally correct, gradual, and often carried out with the silent consent of society. Is it possible that right now, even in the country I call home, a genocide is unfolding against us? Is genocide only a chapter in history books, or is it today's reality? Would you recognize it if it unfolded right before your eyes, hidden in legal clauses, government reforms, or beautiful promises? Perhaps without knowing it, we have already given our consent, obediently, quietly, because we've grown used to accepting what the media tells us without questioning it and calling it our own opinion. Latvia, small on the map, yet in recent years sinking deep into the swamp. A nation that has lived through occupation, through the so-called independence, and now faces something far more insidious, a genocide in a suit. Its size does not diminish the weight of its suffering. The pain endured here speaks to people everywhere. Latvia stands as both a home and a warning. And if one looks closely at what has happened here, similar patterns may be unfolding where you live. Genocide doesn't erupt overnight. It follows a pattern, one so predictable that if we learn to recognize it, we can see it unfolding long before the extermination begins. Gregory Stanton is an American lawyer and internationally recognized human rights expert who founded the organization Genocide Watch and developed one of the most widely used genocide classification models in the world. Human rights specialists globally use this model to identify and stop genocide before it reaches the final stage. Stanton warns, genocide is not only the immediate killing of people, it can be a long, bureaucratically masked, legally correct, and psychologically sophisticated process. According to Stanton's theory, genocide does not happen suddenly. It is a systematic process with 9 sequential stages. The last stage, extermination, is well known from history books. But before that, there are 8 silent stages that prepare the ground.
How we can encourage and potentially think about mandatory vaccination.
In this documentary, I use my home country as a case study to show how the stages of genocide unfold in practice across 3 coordinated fronts. First, the imposition of mass vaccination through coercion. Second, the systematic economic dismantling of the local population. Third, the comprehensive poisoning of the environment, air, water, soil, food, and even cognition itself, executed through legally compliant mechanisms without responsibility, oversight, or consequence. Each of these is a different face of the same system, control disguised as progress. This is how modern genocide wears a suit. In 2020, the world was paralyzed. Out of fear of the virus, people traded away their rights for safety. Governments suspended human rights, seized control, and all those responsible for upholding the Constitution remained silent. In Latvia, one of the most sophisticated stages of genocide began. coercion to use experimental medicines through blackmail. We will now examine whether the term genocide can be applied to the events of the COVID era, according to Gregory Stanton's stages of genocide. The first stage of genocide is classification, the deliberate division of society into us and them. Governments around the world, including the Latvian government, split the population into two groups, vaccinated and unvaccinated, creating a feeling of opposing camps. People will be sorted, so to speak, or separated, those who are vaccinated and who are not. This was the first stage of genocide. The second stage of genocide is symbolization. This is the targeted marking of a group with visible identifiers. In fascist Germany, Jews had to wear the yellow Star of David and were banned from certain public spaces, parks, theaters, public transportation. In 21st century Latvia, the same was done, only with a different symbol, the digital vaccination certificate. If you did not have this symbol, you were banned from public places, entering shops, traveling, and receiving healthcare. The QR code became the mark that determined who was the right citizen and who was dangerous to society. In Latvia, as in fascist Germany, this symbol effectively made the unwanted group visible, isolatable, and oppressible. The digital certificate was the most visible symbol of genocide. The third stage of genocide is discrimination, restricting or removing the rights of a specific group. In Latvia, the unvaccinated were denied constitutional rights to work, to receive medical care, to assemble, and to express their dissenting, critical opinions. The government did this to force everyone to use what later turned out to be an ineffective, untested, and unsafe drug. The fourth stage of genocide is dehumanization, humiliating, demonizing, and portraying the target group as inferior, undesirable, or dangerous. Latvian media regularly describe the unvaccinated as uneducated, irresponsible, and a threat to society. Banks blacklisted the most vocal unvaccinated individuals who dared to speak publicly, equating them with terrorists. Refusing vaccination became the pretext for genocide supporters to boycott the businesses of the unvaccinated and push to drive them out of society entirely. The fifth stage of genocide, according to Stanton, is organization, the structured, methodical preparation of genocide at the level of state institutions. In Latvia, this was done by creating special commissions and operational groups that coordinated the introduction and enforcement of restrictions.
The vaccines will have gone through the same safety path as the vaccines used until now. Vaccines are safe and effective.
Judges, who are meant to serve as an independent branch of power, in practice stopped applying human rights laws that carried greater legal weight than the emergency regulations. At the door, everyone who comes in is checked with the phone, and only the ones having the green certificate are let in. That's it. The sixth stage of genocide is polarization, the deliberate division of society and the incitement of hatred. In Latvia's public media and in politicians' statements, rhetoric was constantly maintained that split families, friendships, and workplace relationships. Public discourse was dominated by shaming, intimidation, spreading panic, and sowing hatred towards those who refuse to use experimental drugs. People who have died from COVID will not have Christmas, of course.
What about masks? I think there are a lot of people in America who are confused about whether they should be wearing a mask.
Well, that's interesting. You know, what is the downside of wearing a mask? I mean, it's got to be tough. You know, you have to wear pants.
Did you notice the tactic our self-proclaimed public health expert, Mr. Bill Gates, is using? It's called the straw man fallacy, twisting a real question into a weaker version, then attacking that instead. The trick creates the illusion of victory, while the true point is left untouched. The seventh stage is preparation, the administrative setup of the genocide process, including the creation of laws, regulations, and registries. In Latvia, various registries were created, lists for mandatory vaccination, as well as new restrictive regulations aimed at blackmailing and punishing those who refuse to use experimental drugs or publicly express opposition to their use. A testing regime was introduced that allowed the infection numbers to be artificially inflated on a massive scale.
The panic is created by these false positive PCR tests. 89% until 94% of those PCR tests are false positive.
Latvian doctors, without analysis or criticism, adopted the World Health Organization's recommended artificial ventilation protocols, which later proved deadly. Specific manufacturers' medicines were procured and promoted as the only acceptable treatment, thereby condemning the right to choose alternative drugs and methods. Listen to how the Latvian Minister of Health explains the very laws and regulations he himself imposed. Reporter asks, if the vaccination certificate has expired, you can continue to work, be employed. For example, an employee can spend 7 to 8 hours at his workplace, but he is not allowed to run into the shopping center for 10 minutes to grab a few things. Where is the logic? What the health minister answers, I think that one of the things that the pandemic period shows is that the use of term logic has become very subjective, and the logics that can be applied are very different. Wasn't it Orwell who wrote that lies are truth, war is peace, and freedom is slavery? Now the Latvian health minister adds a new twist. There is logic, and then there is COVID logic. The 8th stage is persecution, the systematic intimidation, repression, and emotional or economic abuse of the target group. In Latvia, the unvaccinated were deprived of the right to work and fined for exercising basic human rights, such as breathing freely without masks, gathering to express opposing opinions, or entering a shop without a QR code. The government carried out violent arrests, reprisals, the use of electric shock devices, and physical coercion.
Neaizcietiet mani! Fuck you! Centras grupai taisers pielietots vēl vienu ekipāžu pasaules uz šeit. Nedari! Ko jūs darāt?
The 9th stage is extermination, the mass physical or psychological destruction of people. This is the final, most tragic stage of genocide, which often takes place in full view of all, but can only be prevented by stopping the earlier stages in time. In Nazi Germany, people were herded into gas chambers and killed. Today, genocide looks more civilized. People line up for it themselves, rolling up their sleeves to receive the shot. They call it voluntary, but is it really voluntary? The nation has been brought to its knees. This is humiliation. Are you getting vaccinated because of work? Yesterday I got a call. Honestly, it's hard to speak without using strong words. There is no choice. In truth, there is no choice. If I don't get vaccinated, I can't work. We have to work, feed our children, pay the mortgage. That's how it is. I work for a state institution. Everything that's happening now is genocide against the people. If the government can't call it by another name, then I don't know what else to call it. It's genocide, a mass destruction of the nation. Do you trust the vaccine? No, absolutely not. I'm forced to get vaccinated just to survive, to be allowed into stores, to keep my job, because we were told clearly that we would lose our jobs otherwise. So I have no choice but to take the vaccine and take the risk. These are not the words of rebels or radicals. They are the voices of people who simply wanted to live, work, and feed their families. But in a system that calls coercion care, survival becomes conditional, and people quickly learn that staying alive now requires compliance. This did not stop the government from deliberately spreading lies that the vaccine was safe and effective. These drugs were forced on people through threats and blackmail. What makes this crime deliberate? The vaccine was never even tested for its ability to stop transmission. On October 10, 2022, Pfizer executive Janis admitted before the European Parliament that this was the case.
Was the Pfizer COVID vaccine tested on stopping the transmission of the virus before it entered the market?
Regarding the question around, did we know about stopping humanisation before it entered the market? No. We had to really move at the speed of science.
Yet officials and media worldwide told us the exact opposite, every single day.
It is safe and effective against COVID-19.
This is a safe and effective vaccine.
That these are safe and effective products.
It's safe and that it's effective.
The vaccines, that they are safe and effective.
Safe and effective coronavirus vaccine.
COVID vaccine is safe and effective.
That this vaccine is safe and effective.
Vaccine is safe and effective.
Pfizer's COVID vaccine is safe and effective.
Safe and effective.
Safe and effective.
We were mandated to take experimental vaccines on the false premise that they stop transmission, when in fact they did not. But the truth is even more alarming. Governments knew that the vaccines neither stopped transmission nor were proven safe. On November 20, 2020, the European Union signed its centralized vaccine procurement contract with Pfizer. Annex 1, Article 1, Clause 4 states, the participating member state acknowledges that the long-term effects and efficacy of the vaccine are not currently known, and that there may be adverse effects of the vaccine that are not currently known. In other words, Pfizer and our elected officials formally acknowledged and knew that there was never any basis to claim the vaccine was either effective or safe. All EU governments knew the truth about its effectiveness and safety, yet deliberately lied to their people.
It is safe and effective against COVID-19.
This is a safe and effective vaccine.
But there is another fact that reveals the depth of corruption. The European Union signed the contract with Pfizer on November 20th, 2020, weeks before the vaccine was even authorized. Only on December 21st, 2020, did the European Medicines Agency and the European Commission grant Pfizer conditional approval, the EU's version of emergency use authorization. So the deal was struck before the product was legally cleared. Governments had already committed billions, even while admitting in the contract itself that long-term safety and efficacy were unknown. The narrative was settled first, the approval came later. Ask yourself, would you buy a drug for your entire family if the manufacturer openly admitted, we don't know if it is effective or safe? Would you spend everything you had on a product that wasn't even registered yet? And would any of your loved ones trust it after you explained what you had done? The European Commission never explained. They made the contract confidential instead. Objectively and honestly, these officials should have told the public that they had signed a contract with the manufacturer clearly stating that the vaccine's effectiveness and safety were unknown, that negative side effects were possible, and that each person should decide for themselves whether to take that risk. Instead, state officials did the opposite. They purchased the product in massive quantities, promoted it aggressively, and attributed to it properties that the product itself, as explicitly acknowledged, did not have. Worse still, these officials agreed to grant Pfizer complete immunity from any liability if the vaccines later proved unsafe or ineffective. In other words, Pfizer and our elected officials formally acknowledged and knew that there was never any basis to claim the vaccine was either effective or safe. All EU governments knew the truth about its effectiveness and safety, yet deliberately lied to their people.
It is safe and effective against COVID-19.
This is a safe and effective vaccine.
Such a sharp increase in mortality immediately after the forced introduction of the experimental drug indicates that the final 9th stage of genocide, extermination, had effectively been reached. In fascist Germany, the destruction of victims was loud and public. This time in Latvia, and worldwide genocide was quiet. People died silently after being forced to take the experimental mRNA drug. Of course, it's no longer a surprise, but just look how Latvia's Minister of Health runs away when asked about his personal responsibility. Daniel, hello. Are you ready to take personal responsibility for the vaccination?
As a politician, I'm responsible for everything. Please let me work.
Are you ready to take personal responsibility?
I am ready. I have proved it by taking this position. Please let me work.
How will your personal responsibility look like? Daniel, how will it look like? Are you personally ready to pay for all the vaccine adverse reactions to all the families? Five years after we were forced to take the vaccines, the truth finally surfaces. Not from rumors or speculation, but from an official source. The U.S. Health Secretary, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., now publicly confirms the vaccines did not protect, and they caused deaths.
The Pfizer vaccine, when it came out, it had a higher all-cause mortality, so more people died in the placebo group. I mean, more people died in the vaccine group than in the placebo group. I had 20,000 people who got the vaccine, 20,000 who didn't. And after 6 months, they looked at it, and there was 23% more deaths in the vaccinated group from all causes than in the placebo group. And the efficacy was kind of dubious because
well, yeah.
There was only 2 people who died from COVID in the placebo group. And there was 1 person who died from COVID in the vaccine group, and that's the whole data set they were looking at. And so they said, you remember they were saying the vaccine is 100% effective. Well, that's why they were saying it, because there was 2 was 100% of 1, right? 100% larger than 1. So but that's what they had. But they were telling the American people, oh, it's 100% effective. And that when people heard that, they thought, if you get the vaccine, you can't get COVID, which of course now everybody realizes was wrong, because everybody got COVID, whether they got the vaccine or not.
The COVID shots have negative efficacy after 6 months. Tell me how a shot with negative efficacy is saving lives, and it has the worst side effect profile of any vaccine in human history. So how exactly is a vaccine with the worst side effects and negative efficacy saving lives? That's a preposterous claim.
A large-scale study from Japan, covering 18 million people, revealed a chilling truth. Each additional dose of the mRNA COVID vaccine increased the risk of death. 90 to 120 days after vaccination, mortality among the vaccinated was 4.5 times higher than among the unvaccinated. In April, the JMA Journal, the official publication of the Japan Medical Association, confirmed a significant rise in excess deaths across 2022 and 2023. This is not speculation. It is a peer-reviewed scientific study based on data from 18 million people, one of the most comprehensive analyses of vaccine safety ever published. To understand how modern genocide hides behind laws in medicine, we must listen to those who have witnessed it before. Holocaust survivor Vera Sharav exposes the same patterns repeating. She reminds us that when governments and corporations unite under the banner of public health, humanity itself becomes the experiment, in which people are sacrificed like guinea pigs for the greater good.
This was calculated. This was formulated. This was focus grouped. This was articulated. This was manufactured. This was falsified. This was coerced. This was inflicted. This was denied. We were terrorized. We were isolated. We were gaslit. We were dehumanized. We were wounded. Some of us were killed. Don't let them get away with it. Don't let them get away with it.
I believe that we are in the midst of one of the greatest crimes in human history. Criminal trials,
so
I would welcome
You're comparing the COVID-19 vaccine to the Holocaust.
The state, however you define that, the military, CDC, Tony Fauci, Ralph Barrick at the University of North Carolina, created a weaponized virus, correct? Gain-of-function research. They contracted it out to China, and it caused a pandemic around the world once it was released. The government created a weaponized virus that then got out and caused a global pandemic. When are we going to have accountability for that?
For more than 30 years, Latvia has been living under another form of systemic destruction, one that doesn't fill hospital wards or make headlines overnight, yet is just as lethal over time. This is economic genocide, the deliberate dismantling of a nation's ability to provide for itself, forcing a huge amount of people to leave their home country and pass their market share and capital to foreign corporations. In theory, Latvia's tax system is fair. In practice, it's a machine designed to crush the local population. The tax system is presented as fair and equal, but in reality, the tax burden is radically different. Workers pay up to 80% of their income in taxes and fees. Local businesses face tax burden from 15 to 80% of turnover. Meanwhile, foreign corporations have tax burden only a few percent, all perfectly legal because the system was built this way. In 2024, Rimi, Latvia's dominant supermarket chain, had just 3.9% tax burden. Another supermarket chain, Maxima, had 4.8% tax burden. Swedbank pays less than 1%. This isn't a market economy. It's an engineered transfer of wealth and power. Stanton's 9 stages of genocide fit Latvia's economic destruction with chilling precision. Classification. Society is divided into locals and foreign corporations. The rules in the playing field are never the same for both sides. How much tax does Rimi pay? 3.9%. That's the tax burden on turnover. But for local restaurants, the tax burden is 25%, even up to 50%. How can this be? Good question. How can this be? According to official data, annually Latvia loses approximately 3.1 billion euros in tax revenue because of major tax incentives, equivalent to nearly a quarter of all tax collections. A concrete example of how this unequal system works can be seen in Rimi, the largest supermarket chain in Latvia. In 2017, the Latvian government approved Rimi's logistics center project in Riga as an eligible investment. With this status came special privileges, a corporate income tax discount worth up to 6.4 million euros. That's 25% off the company's long-term investment costs, calculated on a project worth over 25 million euros. For a multinational corporation, this is just smart business. But for local shopkeepers and small producers, who pay full tax, face inspections, and have no access to such schemes, it is another nail in the coffin. Rimi's response to receiving state-backed investment was to cut local products and brands from its shelves, replacing them with hundreds of its own private label goods. This is how classification works in economic genocide. One set of rules for global corporations, another for the locals struggling to survive. Corrupt politicians excuse themselves by claiming that small businesses simply have weak lobbies. The foreign investor lobby is very strong in all these areas, the banking sector, trade, and many others, as a result of which such amendments have not been able to be put forward through Parliament so far. Corrupt politicians admit it openly. The foreign lobby is so powerful that Latvian politicians have no chance to think about their own people. Instead, all their time is spent serving the interests and enriching the owners of foreign corporations. The question is, what do you want? Do you want to have small cafes on the street or not? Do you want to have more small shops in Latvia? Or is it all just Rimi and Maxima? Your policy also follows from what the goal is. I'm a bookkeeper. I work with many small clients, and I see every day how they struggle. There is a huge tax burden for small businesses. I know several of them myself. If they try to pay all the taxes, they can't do it at all. So the tax burden is too high. Symbolization. The local entrepreneur is branded as unpromising, inefficient, or unable to meet European standards, while foreign investors are given the image of visionaries and saviors. How can there be fair competition when the tax burden is so radically different? This question has been raised many times during state revenue service audits, but auditors don't care. In fact, they do worse. They lecture small business owners. If you don't know how to do business like Remy, then shut down, or go get a job at Remy. Yes, they say it openly. The Coordination Council for Large and Strategically Significant Investment Projects, chaired by Prime Minister, boasts, "We have successfully doubled investor attention in Latvia over the past year, leading to a significant increase in investment volumes." This success, they say, is the result of government efforts to cut red tape, simplify tax policies, and provide state support for investments, innovation, and workforce development. All these privileges go to powerful foreign investors, while local people are pushed into deeper poverty. The next stage of the economic genocide is discrimination. The system then enforces the divide. Locals face crushing taxes, up to 80% of income or turnover, while foreign corporations pay token amounts, often the total tax burden, less than 5% of the turnover. 80% is a huge, enslaving tax burden. Let's break down exactly how it is formed. You work for an employer, and for example, you've earned 1,000 euros. The employer is ready to pay you this amount. It is your hard-earned money. But in reality, you only receive 550 euros because the rest is taken in various fees, contributions, and taxes. The first tax burden alone is about 45%, but that is not all. You also pay around 15% more in other charges. For example, property tax, excise taxes, and fuel prices, which are driven mostly by taxes rather than the product itself. On top of that comes the road tax, electricity tax, and dozens of others. Almost every government office finds a way to extract something from you whenever you need their services. Today, our government has already introduced more than 100 different taxes and fees under various names. So after these payments, your tax burden rises by another 15%, reaching about 60% in total. But even that is not the end. For nearly every product or service you buy, you must also pay value-added tax, which in Latvia is 21%. Adding this on top, the total tax burden climbs to nearly 80%. We caught the finance minister on the street to ask why the tax burden is so unfair. He doesn't say it's a mistake. He answers that it's general tax policy. Banks, acting under government instruction, weaponize the so-called law on the prevention of money laundering and terrorism and proliferation financing. In theory, it's meant to fight crime. In practice, it's used to treat ordinary citizens like potential terrorists, demanding endless documents and explanations for even the smallest transactions. People are interrogated over a few euros. A mother of children is shopping online on the world's largest marketplace, Amazon, with a turnover of more than 30 billion, if I'm not mistaken. There she wants to buy educational materials for her children and a unicorn print swim ring for a minor. The Latvian bank Swedbank, which is a resident bank in Latvia, refuses this transaction, claiming it is a suspicious transaction, very likely related to terrorism and a threat to the state of Latvia. The total value of this suspicious transaction was about 30 euros. While multinational corporations move millions without anyone daring to investigate or prosecute them, the law becomes not a shield for society, but a sword aimed at its own people, selectively enforced to protect the powerful and punish the powerless. Dehumanization. Small businesses are portrayed as fraudsters, tax dodgers, or relics of the past. Here is an article in a Latvian mainstream portal. The headline says that the State Revenue Service has started chasing mushroom and berry sellers along the roadsides. This shows how the state's administrative resources are being directed toward destroying the local people of Latvia, driving them into poverty. One member of parliament even went so far as to call all Latvians living in rural areas dishonest. If the people living in these rural regions became honest in every aspect, then perhaps there would be a chance for development, maybe even for something as simple as a store. The State Revenue Service asks me, how did you find the company from which you bought the printer? Why did you buy that printer? A huge amount of time is wasted on correspondence with the tax authority, and by law, we even have to calculate labor taxes on the time spent writing these replies about buying a printer. Meanwhile, foreign companies are celebrated as drivers of growth and pillars of the economy. Organization. State agencies, banks, and regulatory bodies are used to systematically exhaust and eliminate local competition through endless audits, account closures, and bureaucratic traps. About a month ago, I was sitting and having coffee with a major taxpayer, a local Latvian citizen and company owner, whose business holds not the largest, but the second largest share of the entire market in his sector in Latvia. And he told me this: I set up a company in Finland for a very simple reason. Because in Finland, I can make bank transfers. Here I have to speak in censored words. Better that way, right? The brutes from the State Revenue Service mocked and mocked, carried out audit after audit on order, until the company was shut down. For the past 3 years, I've had a business in Estonia, and honestly, it's like paradise. I invite all Latvians to move to Estonia. If you work normally there, nobody bothers you. There was a time when I would punch those who said this country. I used to say, our country. But now, I myself say, this country. Polarization. The media fuels public resentment, convincing society that local producers are incompetent or dishonest, while foreign capital is the only path to progress. In recent years, there was a notable case in Latvia, the bankruptcy of the small local restaurant Kinfield. The company was essentially forced to shut down for one simple reason. It tried to pay all of its taxes in Latvia. Look at how blatantly a member of parliament polarizes, describing a local restaurant owned by a young woman as ordinary and bad example, while calling KFC and McDonald's unique and innovative restaurant concepts. An example, Kinfield. In my opinion, this is not a good example. Why is it not a good example? Because it is not a unique product. It has nothing to do with innovation. If, for instance, we had another KFC or another McDonald's, well, that would be a significantly different matter. Unbelievable. Local restaurant dismissed by the Member of Parliament as nothing special, not innovative, while praising KFC and McDonald's as if they were. This shows just how deep the foreign lobby's influence runs. What he cannot grasp is that in Latvia, no strong international company can ever be born, because small businesses here face a tax burden up to 50 times heavier than the one carried by global corporations with powerful foreign backers. What should the tax burden look like? Let's take Poland as an example. In Poland, agricultural businesses pay no taxes at all, a 0% rate, on income up to 12,000 euros. From 12,000 euros to 20,000 euros, the rate is just 2%. And gradually, step by step, a small business can grow into a large one. The same principles should be applied in Latvia. What remains for the small entrepreneur after paying taxes is nothing more than a hole in a bagel. We must support our entrepreneurs, and we must never allow such a policy to continue. Preparation. The government adopts laws and standards so burdensome that small enterprises cannot possibly comply. Farmers and shop owners are pushed into dependency on subsidies just to survive. And the final push before leaving the country is given by politicians who openly declare that small business in Latvia should be shut down. A business that cannot pay all its taxes, unfortunately, has no right to exist. For people who are themselves small entrepreneurs, it is absolutely clear that in Latvia, it is impossible for small business to pay all the taxes. That is why, in the view of corrupt politicians under foreign lobby influence and dishonest media, small business has no right to exist. And these are the consequences. People are forced to leave their homeland in massive numbers. Persecution. Those who resist or speak out face fines, license cancellations, targeted inspections, and public shaming until they either close their businesses or leave the country. They came and blocked the accounts without any explanation, without any official decision. Together with my lawyer, we immediately rushed to the State Revenue Service. There sits their arrogant lawyer, openly laughing in our faces. I had it all recorded. She laughed and said, "Yes, we block accounts like this all over Latvia. No decision is needed." I said, "How can it not be needed? I want to appeal the account freeze." And she sneered loudly. "Wasn't it enough that we told you verbally? That's how it happens here." Finally, the market, resources, and political influence are fully captured by foreign capital. Over 400,000 people, roughly a quarter of Latvia's population, have left the country. Of my classmates, 60 to 70% now live abroad. They have left and have no intention of coming back. Here, people can only afford minimum wages. Walking down the street is hard. Living day by day is hard when you see the condition people are in. Most of my friends are abroad, and when I visit them and ask, they say they don't want to come back at all. I could say I have no friends left from my school days. So many have left abroad. The countryside itself feels empty, as if it has died out. Villages are empty, small shops shuttered, and the nation's economic sovereignty erased. The ultimate form of control is not over one nation, one culture, or one political opposition. It is control over every living being on the planet. Geoengineering bypasses political borders, ethnic divisions, and national laws. It is war on a planetary scale, carried out without declaring war. Across Latvia and across the world, airplanes trace silent white lines across the sky. Officially, they are contrails, but behind these streaks lie deliberate, global, militarily coordinated, and covert programs. These operations happen without public consent, without scientific transparency, and without any accountability. Geoengineering manipulates clouds, rainfall, and sunlight itself. It alters the composition of the air we breathe, the water we drink, and the soil that grows our food. This is no longer theory. Thousands of independent scientists, journalists, and whistleblowers have sounded the alarm. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., serving as the U.S. Secretary of Health, has publicly named DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, as a key player in these operations.
My biggest concern is the stratospheric aerosol injections that are continuously peppered on us every day. Bromium, aluminum, strontium, it's sprayed in our skies all day long. And I know you've talked to Dane Wigington about this. He seems to be one of the experts in the field.
Is there a question?
Yes. How do we stop it?
That is not happening in my agency. You know, we don't do that. It's done, we think, by DARPA. And a lot of it now is coming out of the jet fuel.
Yes,
so,
sir.
you know, those materials are put in jet fuel. I'm going to do everything in my power to stop it. We're bringing on somebody who's going to think only about that, find out who's doing it, and holding them accountable.
That means the involvement of military structures in geoengineering is no longer a theory, it is an admission. This is no longer speculation. This is no longer a conspiracy theory. This is now an official statement from a member of the United States government. An official acknowledgement of one of the greatest crimes against humanity ever conceived. When governments themselves confirm what was once dismissed as fiction, the world can no longer pretend not to know. The skies above us are being weaponized, in secret, without consent, and under the banner of public good. This is the moment when denial ends. When governments admit to poisoning the skies, it becomes clear genocide no longer wears a uniform, it wears a suit. In 1962, long before the public heard terms like geoengineering, the idea was already being spoken openly, not in secret labs, but on a university stage in Texas by a man destined to become president. And now United States Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson stood before graduating students and declared that same vision. A world where satellites map every cloud and weather itself can be shaped, steered, and controlled. Then he delivered the line that still echoes today. He who controls the weather will control the world.
It lays the predicate and the foundation for the development of a weather satellite that will permit man to determine the world's cloud layer and ultimately to control the weather, and he who controls the weather will control the world.
And here is the detail history rarely lingers on. The man who warned that he who controls the weather will control the world became President of the United States within hours of John F. Kennedy's assassination, sworn in on Air Force One the very same day. Before the word chemtrail existed, before anyone thought to call it a conspiracy, the United States was already producing educational films explaining how to seed clouds, divert storms, and dampen hurricanes. This 1959 Disney film wasn't classified, it was public relations. A friendly reminder that nature would soon follow human command. Today that film sounds less like optimism and more like a confession hidden in plain sight.
The hurricane is predicted to take. These artificial clouds will block the sun from evaporating more water to feed the hurricane. The reports coming into the control center indicate that the diversionary cloud seeding over Kansas is now creating a flood danger. Specially equipped robot aircraft are dispatched immediately to release a high concentration of cloud seeding material into the fringes of the storm. Heavier seeding from the ground also helps to subdue the rain by spreading it over a wider area. The controller calls for another view of the hurricane, which has now moved closer to the coast.
If this was the public-facing technology of 1959, if school children were casually shown how hurricanes could be steered and rain redistributed, then what does the classified version look like in 2025? What tools exist now after 66 years of funding, secrecy, and military advancement? What are they quietly doing now, above our heads, without a Disney narrator to explain it? Most likely, the development of chemtrail and geoengineering technologies has followed the same trajectory as every other military and atmospheric system. From crude and visible to refined and increasingly invisible. Some earlier interventions may still create visible patterns under certain atmospheric conditions, but modern, upgraded geoengineering methods now operate at particle sizes and dispersion scales the human eye cannot detect. Stratospheric aerosol injections, cloud microphysics manipulation, and marine cloud brightening can all be deployed with techniques that leave little, and sometimes nothing, visible in the sky. And the more advanced the technology becomes, the less we can rely on our eyes to detect it. That is the point. Today's atmosphere can be engineered without producing any obvious trace at all. Let that sink in. The frontier of geoengineering may already be operating beyond human sight. If intelligent beings ever visited Earth, they wouldn't need advanced instruments to assess our condition. One glance would be enough. A species poisoning its own habitat, methodically, elegantly, almost ritualistically, while insisting that everything is fine. We poison the air we breathe, the water we drink, the food we eat, the medicine we trust, and the very mind we use to understand the world. And we do it so quietly, so bureaucratically, that most people don't even notice. This isn't chaos, this is policy. The most intimate form of poisoning begins on our plates. Crops are sprayed with chemicals designed to kill. Not one chemical, hundreds, layered, combined, interacting in ways no regulatory agency has ever actually tested. Glyphosate in the fields, atrazine in the rivers, neonicotinoids killing the soil life beneath our feet. Animals raised in factory farms are pumped full of antibiotics, not because they're sick, but because the conditions are so unnatural that they would die without them. Those antibiotics then pass into the meat, into the soil, into the water, into our children, fueling antibiotic resistance that threatens the entire medical system. The seeds themselves are engineered to be dependent. Sterile hybrids, chemical-dependent varieties, patents replacing nature. Farmers no longer own their harvest, corporations do. And when the food finally reaches the processing stage, the assault becomes almost artistic. Artificial colors, synthetic flavors, preservatives, emulsifiers, stabilizers, thousands of chemical additives never meant for human biology. High fructose corn syrup rewires metabolism. Cheap seed oils ignite chronic inflammation. Trans fats clog arteries. Ultra-processed foods hijack dopamine pathways more efficiently than some street drugs. This isn't nutrition. It's a slow-motion experiment in mass chemical exposure, and the population is the study group. The attack does not stop at the dinner table. It follows us into our lungs. Industrial pollution, diesel exhaust, volatile organic compounds, microplastics in the air, invisible particles small enough to pass through the lungs, enter the bloodstream, and reach the brain. Inside our homes, the air is often worse. Synthetic fragrances, plastic off-gassing, mold spores, chemical cleaners, flame-retardant dust. This exposure is constant, unavoidable, normalized. We breathe it, animals breathe it, children breathe it. Breathing used to be simple. Now it's an act of faith. Water, once the planet's great purifier, now carries our collective waste. The oceans are filled with plastic, not only bottles, but particles so small they slip through filters. Enter fish, enter humans, enter unborn babies. Nanoplastics have been found in blood, lungs, placentas, and even brain tissue. Municipal systems add chemicals in the name of safety. Fluoride, still contested. Chlorine, necessary but forming carcinogenic byproducts. Pharmaceutical residues, antidepressants, birth control hormones, antibiotics, all passing through wastewater into rivers and drinking supplies. And then there are the pipes themselves. Old cities deliver water laced with lead. New cities deliver water flowing through plastic systems that leach microparticles. Water was once our teacher in purity. Now it's a mirror reflecting our negligence. Beyond what we eat, drink, and breathe lies a new frontier, the world of invisible frequencies. Never in human history have we been surrounded by this many artificial signals. Radio, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, 4G, 5G, thousands of satellite beams crossing the sky. Towers rise beside playgrounds. Routers pulse beside beds. Phones radiate in pockets, against skulls, on nightstands inches from sleeping children. No long-term global safety studies, no public consent, just deployment. We live in a permanently electrified soup of microwave radiation, untested, unregulated, and inescapable. Future generations will ask how an entire civilization rolled this out without a single precautionary conversation. The answer is simple, because convenience sells faster than science. And then there is the system that was supposed to protect us. Hospitals have become part of a medical industrial complex where treatment can be more profitable than prevention, where chronic disease is a business model, where pharmaceutical companies shape demand through marketing, incentives, and influence, weakening the doctor-patient relationship. Drugs with devastating side effects are pushed aggressively. Some are withdrawn years later, but only after destroying lives. Entire populations have been caught in waves of pharmaceutical dependency, not through criminal cartels, but through corporate strategies, regulatory capture, and sales targets. Preventable deaths in hospitals now rank among the leading causes of death in developed countries. Medical error has become systemic. This is not healing. This is dependency disguised as care. But the most dangerous poisons are not swallowed or inhaled. They are absorbed through the eyes and ears. For the first time in history, a small group of corporations controls almost all global information. What we read, what we see, what we are allowed to know. Not by censorship alone, but through algorithms that shape reality quietly, invisibly, constantly. Social media platforms engineer addiction with precision. Endless scrolling rewires the brain. Notifications trigger dopamine cycles. Data profiles predict our fears and desires better than we do. Mainstream media manufactures narratives. Fact-checkers neutralize dissent. Censorship masquerades as safety. Public opinion is no longer organic. It is engineered. And this is the genius of the system. When you control the mind, you don't need chains. People police each other. People censor themselves. People defend the very structures that exploit them. That is the deepest poison of all. Look at each of these domains separately and you see problems. Look at them together and you see a system. A system that poisons the food, the air, the water, the medicine, and the mind. A system that weakens populations slowly, subtly, predictably. A system so normalized that most people defend it. No gas chambers, no firing squads, no armies marching through villages, just policies, just experts, just institutions, just quiet harm delivered through everyday life. This is not genocide with rifles. This is genocide with guidelines, genocide with certificates, genocide with compliance forms, genocide in a suit. A logical question arises when we see such a targeted and coordinated policy of destruction against the people. Who is organizing it? The answer lies within the structure of global finance and international power. 3 of the world's most influential investment funds, BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street, control more than 90% of all companies listed on the S&P 500, the 500 largest publicly traded corporations in the United States. Together, they manage over 20 trillion euros, more than the combined budgets of every government on Earth. They are not merely financial players. They set the direction of global politics, shape media narratives, control the pharmaceutical industry, and dictate economic models applied almost everywhere, especially in small nations like Latvia. British medical doctor Tess Lawrie, once a consultant to the World Health Organization, now exposes how this system of control, the modern genocide, truly operates.
Our governments are not in control of policy right now, of health policy, and it's really important to understand this. Our governments are enforcing policies that come from policy distributors like the World Health Organization, the United Nations, the World Bank. But the World Health Organization is not making its policies either. The policies are coming from these so-called think tanks that think on behalf of the corporations. So they think that the policymakers are organizations like the World Economic Forum, Chatham House, the Council of Foreign Relations, the Rockefeller Foundation, the Club of Rome. These organizations are thinking for our governments.
Years before COVID, a major policy-shaping institution, had already incorporated a pandemic scenario into its planning, openly. The Rockefeller Foundation published it in 2010. Yes, you heard that right, 2010. Here's a direct excerpt from the chapter titled, Lockstep. The pandemic that the world had been anticipating for years finally hit. Even the most pandemic-prepared nations were quickly overwhelmed as the virus spread around the world. During the pandemic, national leaders flexed their authority, imposing airtight rules and restrictions, from mandatory masks to body temperature checks at the entrances of train stations and supermarkets. Many people later wondered, how could governments across the entire world react in almost exactly the same way? Now you know why. Latvia's government, integrated into these global structures through banks, international institutions, investment treaties, and lobbying networks, acts as a local executor of global directives. The result? Centralized, systematic pressure on the nation's health, freedom, family values, economy, and environment. Unlike the fascists or communists who impose their ideology openly, with flags, slogans, and tanks, the globalists operate in secrecy, with cunning precision and staggering hypocrisy. They capture minds through media, buy governments with financial leverage, and rewrite laws through corporate lobbying. When people talk about genocide, they imagine a villain, a mastermind, a cabal in shadows pulling the strings. And yes, there are architects of this system, cold, calculating, ruthless. But here is the truth no one wants to say out loud. They are not the only force. The other force is us. Yes, you, me, the ordinary citizen. Because no tyranny survives on brutality alone. It survives on cooperation, on obedience, on silence, on millions of small psychological choices people make every day when they see something wrong and do nothing. Genocide in a suit is not powered only by the globalists who design it. It is powered by the minds that accept it, justify it, and sometimes even defend it. And that is the most uncomfortable truth of all. The system needs our psychology more than it needs its power. If the mind submits, the body follows, and the system wins without lifting a finger. In the famous Ash experiment, the setup was deceptively simple. 3 people sat in a room. A bell rang, and everyone stood up. The bell rang again, and everyone sat down. Then came the real participant, the next person. He wasn't paid to play along. He wasn't told this was an experiment. He simply joined the group. The bell rang. Everyone stood up. So did he. The bell rang again. Everyone sat down. So did he. What he didn't know was this. The bell was no longer connected to anything. There was no rule, no instruction, no reason. Yet when the bell rang, 3 out of 4 participants continued to stand up and sit down. Not because it made sense, not because it was required, but because everyone else did it. Not believing felt safer than questioning. Standing out felt more dangerous than obeying. This is the first psychological tool of modern control. Make obedience collective, and people will obey without force. Replace the bell with a regulation, a mandate, a social rule, a narrative. If everyone stands up, who am I to stay seated? At that moment, behavior replaces thought. Compliance replaces truth, and obedience no longer needs explanation. The second mechanism comes from Stanley Milgram. Participants were told to administer electric shocks to a stranger in another room. They heard screams, begging, silence. But the man in the white lab coat simply said, "The experiment requires you to continue." And people continued. 2/3 of them delivered what they believed were lethal shocks, not because they were evil, but because an authority figure told them to. Milgram proved a brutal truth. Ordinary people will commit extraordinary harm when they believe responsibility belongs to someone else.
Cup. That's wrong. 225 volts. He's in a lot of pain.
Continue, please.
But he's not comfortable.
We must continue to the end of the experiment. We'll learn the lights will not he has to go on until he's learnt the words correctly.
Okay. That's wrong. 240 volts.
This is how modern systems operate. Experts in suits issue orders. Bureaucrats follow protocols. Citizens obey rules they never questioned. No one feels responsible. Everyone feels justified, and the harm multiplies. The third mechanism is called Stockholm Syndrome. It is not a mystery, it is a survival strategy. When a person is trapped in a hostile system they cannot escape, the mind slowly begins to identify with the captor. It becomes safer to agree than to resist, safer to praise than to question, safer to say, "I'm fine," than "I'm being crushed." We are sometimes asked, can it be without value-added tax? We say no, that would undermine our moral standards. VAT has to be paid, and we can't do it any other way. Honestly, I don't even know how it would work, and I don't want to know. This is why modern citizens proudly defend the very systems that exploit them. Why people who can barely survive under taxation say, "I pay everything, I am the good one." It is not virtue, it is trauma. Because admitting the truth, this system is designed so I cannot survive, is emotionally unbearable. So the mind invents a story. I am honest, I am moral, I am loyal. In reality, this is not loyalty, it is psychological captivity. There is a moment every small business owner knows. The numbers don't add up. The work is endless. The money is not enough. The system is impossible. But saying it out loud feels like failure. So the mind invents a heroic version. I'm a good citizen. I pay everything. I'm doing the right thing. Ego becomes anesthesia. Self-deception becomes painkiller. Reality is too painful, so people build moral monuments on top of their chains. When reality is unbearable, the mind switches to positive illusion mode. I create my own reality. Everything is possible. You just need the right mindset. Think positive. The universe will fix it. These phrases are not evil. They are shields. Because the alternative would be too heavy. I work 12 hours a day and I still can't survive. The system is rigged against me. I am drowning, but I must pretend I'm thriving. The mind chooses illusion because illusion hurts less. And eventually, people stop fighting, even after the cage is open. This is known as learned helplessness, one of the darkest psychological mechanisms ever identified. When an animal is subjected to unpredictable punishment, shocks, stress, pain, and no amount of effort changes the outcome, it eventually stops trying. Even when the cage door is opened, it does not move. Humans behave the same way. When citizens spend years battling bureaucracy, years drowning in debt, years being punished simply for surviving, they stop believing that change is possible. They stop resisting. They stop questioning. They stop hoping. They don't say, "I'm oppressed." They say, "This is just how things are. Nothing can change." That isn't apathy, that is conditioning. Put these psychological mechanisms together, and you get a population that defends the system that exploits them, obeys without being asked, repeats the majority's lie, and feels moral pride in their own suffering. This is why silent genocide works, not with violence, but with psychology. A population that rejects its own perception is already conquered. A population that obeys authority without question is already controlled. A population that justifies harm and feels helpless is already enslaved. No chains are necessary. The prison is internal.
240 volts.
People will police themselves. They will shame dissent. They will attack truth-tellers. They will defend their captors. They will call their chains responsibility. They will call their submission morality.
Continue, please.
But he's not comfortable.
You must continue to the end of the experiment.
This is the deeper cause of silent genocide. A population whose psychology has been trained to comply. Because once the mind submits, the body follows. Society follows. History follows. And the genocide in a suit continues. Not because the system is powerful, but because people have been trained to stand up when the bell rings, to sit down when it rings again, and never ask why the bell is ringing at all. And when a population has been conditioned this way, one last mechanism takes control. Up to this point, we have examined the 8 silent stages of genocide, the stages that prepare the ground quietly, legally, methodically. In the 9th stage, extermination, the only stage most people ever recognize. For most, extermination is where genocide ends. But according to Gregory Stanton, it does not. There is a 10th stage. It is called denial. And this is the stage we are living in now. The 9th stage is not finished. Extermination is still unfolding. And at the same time, the 10th stage, denial, is already fully active. Denial does not arrive decades later in history books. It operates in real time. It sounds like we followed the science. Responsibility dissolved into procedure. It sounds like correlation is not causation, used not to investigate, but to end the conversation. It looks like excess deaths acknowledged, but never explained. It looks like decisions made collectively, so no one is accountable. It looks like the quiet insistence that it's time to move on. Governments dismiss inconvenient facts. Institutions launder language. Officials insist nothing unusual occurred. Media looks away, and ordinary people choose not to see what is directly in front of them. Evidence is minimized. Responsibility is diffused. Questions are treated as threats. This is the 10th stage of genocide, denial. Not after the crime is over, but while it is still happening. And when denial succeeds, the crime does not need to stop. It only needs to be forgotten. This is how conquest looks in the 21st century. Invisible, profitable, and legal. Fascists burn books. Globalists erase voices with algorithms and media control. Communists confiscated property. Globalists drive people into debt until they sell it themselves. Fascists built concentration camps. Globalists confine the non-compliant with vaccine certificates and digital IDs. Communists force people into collective farms. Globalists force them into lifetime debt and financial submission. Fascists shut down newspapers. Globalists own nearly every major media platform. Communists hunted opposition with the secret police. Globalists do it with censorship, reputational destruction, and banking blacklists. Fascists banned free-spirited education. Globalists rewrite curricula, distort history, erase gender, and erode family values. Communists close churches. Globalists replace faith with technocratic trust in science. Fascists order doctors to serve the regime. Globalists silence doctors with the threat of losing their license or their career. Communists relocated entire populations. Globalists create the conditions where people flee their own homeland by choice. The methods have changed, the slogans have changed, but the outcome is the same: the destruction of human freedom, dignity, and life itself. And still, people vote for the very parties that carry out these policies, genocide parties, simply because most cannot even recognize the genocide being waged against them. Genocide happens when people remain silent, when people are afraid, when they have lost hope, or when they are simply too tired to resist. Genocide is not just a moral wrong, it is one of the gravest crimes against humanity. Under international law, anyone who plans, commits, or supports genocide is criminally liable, with no statute of limitations. From Nuremberg to Rwanda, justice has no expiry date, and one day, the names of those responsible will be spoken, not in whispers, but in courtrooms. Genocide enters our lives quietly, through laws, bureaucracy, media silence, and the illusion of democracy. But no law can turn injustice into justice. No law can make betrayal honorable. No law can make silence an excuse. Genocide can be legal. Only the people can stop it. Stopping it begins with recognition, with truth, with the courage to call things by their real names, with the vision to see that behind these destructive decisions are living human beings, families, language, land, children, and our very sense of identity. If we remain silent, we allow it. If we stand up, it ends. A nation that recognizes genocide is a nation that is reborn. It is time to understand. We are living under globalist terror, not with tanks and guns, but with crushing debt, censorship algorithms, and forced technocracy disguised as noble slogans of democracy. Modern democracy has become a wolf in sheep's clothing, a different form for the same old goal that once humiliated our ancestors under the communist fist and the fascist boot. They spoke different languages and waved different flags, but their aim was the same: to subjugate people, to suppress nations, to seize resources, to erase freedom. None of these regimes is better than the other. They all hate what they cannot control: life, truth, and a people who refuse to bow. Perhaps the right question is no longer whether genocide is happening here. The question is, will we stop it? Stand up. Speak up. Reject the lies. Expose the truth. Stop the slaughter. Help the harmed. Forgive the truly repentant. Identify the crimes. Name the criminals. Put them on trial. Take back control. You can argue that they are to blame. But they only control those who allow themselves to be controlled. The greatest prison is the one built inside your mind. You already hold the key. Unlock it and step into freedom.